The Australian government is hoping to avoid hefty new tariffs on metal exports after Anthony Albanese held a constructive phone call with US President Donald Trump. 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports will come into effect on March 12, meaning the PM has just 1 month to secure an exemption before they begin. But it may not be easy, with Mr Trump's administration already giving Australia a lashing for breaking a previous deal to limit aluminium exports. For their take, let's bring in Housing and Homelessness Minister Clare and Shadow Finance Minister Jane Hume. Good morning to both of you. Clare, how likely is it that Australia ends up being hit with these new tariffs?
Look, I won't get into the odds with you, Nat, but I can tell you that this is a process that the Australian government has been preparing for a really long time. The way to approach this with our friends in America is courteously, professionally, and just putting those facts before them that actually that mutual trading relationship between the US and Australia is hugely beneficial to both our citizens and to theirs. You mentioned that Prime Minister Albanese has had that really constructive conversation with President Trump, and that's been widely reported upon. I think there's a few chapters left to write here, but we've made some really important steps in the right direction.
OK, Jane, let's go back to Donald Trump talking about a broken promise back in 2018, where he says Malcolm Turnbull did a deal and promised to limit the amount of aluminium we send. Have you had a chat to Malcolm? Is that what happened and now we've broken the promise?
I can't say I called Malcolm about this in the last 24 hours. What I can say, though, is that by using the relationships that we had, the coalition government secured an exemption in the previous Trump administration. Peter Dutton stood up yesterday and committed to bipartisan support to help Anthony Albanese act in the national interest. We want to see him use those relationships that he has with the Trump administration to make sure that we can secure a good deal for Australia. Our trading relationship with the US is profoundly important. This is no exception. We would hope that there would be consideration of that in the negotiations between the US Trump administration and the Australian government.
OK, moving on. It's been revealed that government departments and agencies have spent more than $500,000 on welcome to country and smoking ceremonies in the 2 years to July 2024. Already, the coalition government efficiency spokesperson, Jacinta Price, is considering diverting some of this funding away, describing the expenditure as an example of mere symbolism from the government. Clare, $550,000, obviously a lot of taxpayer money. Is there any way to reduce some of that cost of these ceremonies?
Well, look, Nat, honestly, I think this is a huge distraction. The big problem facing the lives of our citizens at the moment is the cost of living and indeed my portfolio of housing, and our government is firmly focused on those two issues. That's what urgently is affecting the lives of people at home at the moment, and that's why we're so focused on it. I would just say, look, with all this stuff about, Peter Dutton, we know he walked out of the apology, he won't stand in front of the Aboriginal flag, now he's saying, he wants to make cuts to welcome to country ceremonies. I just think this has a meanness about it that's really not consistent with Australian values. We've got this beautiful multicultural country because we're respectful and courteous to each other, and we respect each other's cultures and traditions, and that's what welcome to country ceremonies are about.
Jane, is it mean to be talking about this?
I don't think anyone could accuse Jacinta Price of being mean or taking on culture wars unnecessarily. We have to remember that every dollar spent is a dollar that another taxpayer has earned. At a time when closing the gap is a priority, and it's something that we have discussed this week, when Indigenous health outcomes, educational outcomes, rates of incarceration all are priorities, we have to question whether this amount on welcome to country ceremonies is the right use of taxpayer money. Now, they have their place occasionally, but whether it needs to be this amount and this often is a question that I think Jacinta Price will be following up.
Is it a question to ask, Clare? Because, as you say, people are focused on cost of living, and when we find out that over $500,000 is spent, do you think we could cut back a bit? Well, I know it's been happening since 2008 in federal parliament.
Yeah. I'm listening to what Jane's saying there, and I just say really politely to Jane, her party's had 3 years to come up with a cost of living policy, and their big idea for Australia is that they want to tax the people watching at home, the people in my electorate, to subsidise foie gras and fettuccine for the bosses, and that's going to cost $10 billion a year.
It's not.
It's going to cost $10 billion
I'm just
a year.
lying, Claire.
Just
Just
say to those
just to keep people up to date, you're talking about
watching at home,
giving
we've got Jane
businesses.
saying
We're talking about welcome to country ceremonies, Clare. We're not
lunches.
talking about coalition policies.
Well,
How about you guys talk about your own
I
policies?
know that's what you'd like
Standards
to be
of living
talking
have
about,
gone
Jane,
backwards
but $10 billion subsidising the
People
boss
are
for
poor
lunch.
because
if you're
of Labor
concerned about the cost of
policies.
living,
Talk about
I'd
that,
suggest
Clare.
focusing on people
Talk
at home
about
and their
that.
concerns.
Okay, we might leave it there, but you are talking about Jane's policy. You are talking about giving businesses tax breaks to go to lunch, and we might talk about that at a different time because there's pros and cons of from both sides of that, and we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Here's Shiva.